right, let me go ahead and get started. And like she said, today is on tutor management in academia, and there's a ton of topics that we can go over, as you see. Now, I actually did cover this a little bit in January of this year, so I want to focus on different areas instead of some of the others that I focused then in that presentation. So, but I did want to kind of include them because it's just something kind of important. When you're talking over the total topic of, managing tutors and having them, be able to better help your students that are coming in and visiting. So I've kind of broken it into these four main topics. Getting starting at the beginning of the semester. We kind of went into that last time, so I'm not going to focus on that too much. But if you wanted to see what those topics are, we have them in there. Next is like managing the student visits, like how they would help students, whether it's appointments or walk-ins that you guys do, maybe even meet virtually, and even how to assign the tutors like different tasks and things and kind of record those and keep those in the system. Um, also, for admins to kind of help the tutors with their processes. So, how do they log into Accudemia? How do they sign in for work hours? What's required of them? Are they supposed to complete comments or assessments on the sessions? It depends on how many of the Accudemia features you want to use. And then you could even go further with that if you guys are using some of the newer features, like um, we've had the referrals system where like instructors could refer students over to the center, but even like the new support tickets, um, kind of can be used like an asynchronous module, so that could be part of it too. And then the last section is just some helpful reports. Not all of them are directly tutor related, but most of them are. But there are some that, like, if you start doling out different permissions for tutors, that are good to kind of have those as well. So yeah, the first thing, and this is just kind of from our previous session that we had. So some of the things that you want to think about when you're starting the new semester, is basically managing those tutors that you do have. Maybe you need to inactivate some tutors. Maybe you need to take away the tutor role if the person's no longer, working as a tutor for you. A lot of things like that, like managing them as far as that aspect. You're going to find that under the administration user account section. And I'm going to just pull this over here. Whoop. Make that big. And this is our documentation. I'm sure most people are aware of, but we do actually have that broken into different types of users by their role. So we have admin, tutor, instructor, student guides, even an IT guide. But basically that should help as well. So if you wanted to kind of create a guide from these, you could maybe start off with what we have available for tutors and work with that. But so under administration, user accounts, this is where we're going to find our tutors. So one of the things you can do is just kind of search for only tutors. And, let's say it's the end of this semester, starting up a new semester. This is what I'd want to first look at and kind of go through and either inactivate these folks that aren't going to be my tutors anymore. I can go in, click on their security, and just kind of uncheck that role if they're no longer going to be working in that role for me. Additionally, like if I have new tutors, I might need to look at maybe my students as well. Maybe there's some peer tutors that we just had hired on. Now I can look them up by name. And there's Joel, and he's a peer tutor that I just hired. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here and then just check off that role for him. Now, every time the person gets a role, they're going to have different tabs. So this one here, enrollment's related to them being a student. but we have this one like it's normally just tutor assignments. I've changed my terminology to say tutor/advisor. And then in here I could go ahead and start assigning them, different things. So let's say they're my math tutor, so maybe all the math 100 levels. And you kind of get that. So yeah, it's basically the way I would make sure they're available for the courses that they should be able to help with, and different ways. And of course, I have the new account. So if the person doesn't exist at all, I look up their name, and maybe I don't have them in here, then I can go ahead and just click new account. And the minimum I need though is their first name, last name, and on the security tab, they need to have at least an ID. So it's helpful though to have email on that general info page, just so that way they can get notified of any appointments and things like that if you start using that section. So, all right, let me just minimize that for a sec. The next thing, especially if you're going to be using appointments, if you're using walk-ins, it can help as well to have those tutors schedule themselves, so you know when there's tutors available for walk-ins. And now that the services can be set for specific things, like whether it's an appointment or walk-in service, you can actually, while you're setting the schedule, technically make somebody, a walk-in only tutor versus like maybe appointments and walk-ins, or vice versa, whatever you want to do. So um, now there's two different ways to go about this. Is we could actually have the admin set the schedule under center attendance tutor schedule, or the tutors could set their own schedules. Now, what I want to show you, because I think, like I said, I've covered this before. One of the new things, and this is one of the things that I want to show you, is we actually added a convenience feature here. So when I'm looking at my tutors, instead of having to go to that menu item under tutor advisor schedule, while I'm in here, if I know specifically who I want to work with, like I need to set up her schedule, um, I can now check the box next to them and click on Manage Tutor Schedule. And the cool thing with that is it'll automatically throw their name over here and pull up their current semester schedule. So you can see she doesn't have a schedule, and I could go ahead and get started working on it. Of course, it doesn't pick a center, so you do need to make sure that you pick the right center if you have multiple centers and all that. So cool. And then this is, like I said, where you could actually assign them to different things. So if I just click and drag over any time block and make them available, depending on the services that you have in the center that you selected. Let's say they're a face-to-face tutor and they help with student athlete tutoring as well, which we have a separate category for. So I can go ahead and accept that. And then they're only available for those services. So maybe they don't do appointments and things like that. And that's all based on like the way that service is set up, and they've already got all their courses. And so if I just hit save, then they'd be ready to go. And like I said, that could be a walk-in tutor, it could be somebody who's available for appointments, all based on those services. One thing I do want to show you is if we want them to set their own schedule, under administration, you're going to go to your control panel and into the user account settings. There's this access restrictions section. And in here, we can give the tutor role some extra permissions. So like one of them, like right here, says tutors or advisors can set their own schedule. So, if this is something you want to do, you'd go in there, check that, and then just save it at the top. Now, keep in mind, these are for everyone who's a tutor. So that means it's kind of college-wide setting in a way. So this does affect the tutor role as a whole. So we'll look at some other options if you wanted to be able to set specific tutors to have different options. So, and we'll go back home. So that's what we were talking about, tutor wide permissions versus tutor specific. So um, and there's two ways I can go about it. I could just go to the individual and I could edit them and I could make them system user, which is another name for system admin, but I could give them just specific things that I want them to do. Like maybe I want them to be an appointment administrator or somebody who can set up sign-in stations to help me, in the center, set up sign-in stations. So I could actually go into the specific tutor, edit them, and just give them those permissions. Another way to do this is to create a role group. And under administration, advanced role group templates. This is where I could create those groups. So you can see I have a few in here. I've got like coaches, front desk staff. So this could also be folks that I just want to give permissions and maybe they don't have any other role. So like my front desk staff would, for instance, just be salaried employees that basically work for me and only have these few things that they can do. So they're not really seeing students or anything. They're just, signing them in and helping out with like appointments and other things. And there's like a plus new role. So I would just click that, give it a name, and it's just like setting up the permissions on the user. But instead, this is something that I could then assign to a group of users or, individuals. So, but not the tutor role as a whole. So I think that pretty much sums up a lot of that. Hopefully, if you have imports going, you don't have to worry about like, you know, making sure that classes and enrollment and everything like that for your students are coming over. But um, so, well, once you get everything set up and you're ready for the semester, now we're kind of getting into the inner workings of like, how are the tutors going to be able to help students and things like that. So, some questions that I kind of put out here, and I know they're all kind of running together, I didn't realize, but um, first thing is like helping with student walk-ins, do you want them to be able to help you create sign-in stations? Do you want them to schedule appointments for students? Maybe they need to manage the waiting line. So all of these kind of questions that we actually have answers for. So, for instance, if I wanted them to help me create sign-in stations, I would actually have to give them that admin role and give them like the one permission that says create sign-in stations. So they're not getting access to do everything as admin, but they could help us with that. If I needed them to, schedule appointments with students, by default, a tutor can only schedule with themselves. So I might want to give them like appointment administrator permissions, which is the admin role again, so they could help schedule appointments for everyone. Um, and then managing the waiting line, that one's, you could give them a permission for that, like an admin, but there is actually a tutor wide setting, but just for your center. And let me just pull that up. So when you go into your administration control panel and we look at the walk-ins section and specifically for like your center, if I wanted the tutors to be able to help me with the sign-in, under the very last section, it's kind of labeled miscellaneous here, you will see that there's an option for the tutors to help with managing the waiting line. And basically what that allows them to do is sign students in and out off of the waiting line and like remove them out of the line if like let's say they left the area and things like that. So this can be really helpful. And you can do this per center for your tutors. Like if there's another advising area they don't want to do that, they have front desk people that do it maybe, then they don't have to enable it. And of course, as always, you go up to the top and save if you were going to save that. All right, so helping with meeting virtually. So some of the things that we can do here is, you know, help them basically help the tutors with getting their virtual connection set up. Because a lot of times when you're working in the system, it's a little abstract because you're not actually seeing anything, as far as the connection. It's like you set something at one point and then, magically when the, you know, appointment happens and they get connected with the students, right? Um, so basically they're, to kind of take some of the mystery out of it, we do have some guides on, Zoom integration, for instance. There's a 3-part guide. I don't want to go into all the nitty gritty of it, but one of the things you could do is kind of meet with the tutors, have them sign into their Accudemia account and just have them individually look and see if they're connected to Zoom. They do have to have individual accounts, so they can't be sharing a Zoom account if they're doing the Zoom integration. Another more common option is just to use the virtual link. And this is something you could actually, as an admin, assign to them. So I want to show you the difference between those two, though, real quick. So in the system, again, we're going to go to administration, user accounts, and filter out on our tutors here. So if my tutors were using just like a connect link, and it's kind of like a generic term we use for any kind of link. It could be Teams, it could be, whatever service that you provide a meeting with. I've heard Blackboard Collaborate links and different types of things. But yeah, so when you click on the user on their Gen Info tab here, if it's enabled, we have a Zoom meeting link that should appear. So this is where you would just literally paste that tutor's specific meeting link. So this would be if they have a meeting that link that's available that won't change, and it's going to be constant for them. And like I said, everybody does have to have their own one individually for the Zoom integration, but for this one, technically they could share a link. They just might have other people joining, but I've had some people do that where they all get connected with the same link and then they do their own like kind of breakout sessions from it. But yeah, so this is going to be the easiest to set up because I can see it as an admin. The other way, like when you do Zoom integration, you'd actually have to have them log in and go to their personal options up here and preferences and make sure that you see that the Zoom account is connected. So yeah, if they haven't connected yet, it's going to ask them to connect to a Zoom in this little drop down here. So, and that was right under their personal options and preferences, virtual meetings. And there is some other stuff that has to happen. So that's why I said I don't want to go totally into that, but that's where you would find it, and you would have the tutors log in themselves. Now this account just happens to be an admin and a tutor account, so I could see it. All right, and also do your students know how to connect? So this is where those guides come in handy, and this could be something that, oops, what am I doing? um, Back here in the documentation. So we have a student guide as well. So you could maybe, start off with what we have available in the quick start guide, or we have a full manual as well. Maybe parts of that you want to pull in. And we have some information on like how do they sign in, how to log in right here. Yep. And from there, then it goes into like, how they make appointments and, everything like that. Even signing in virtually. So if you check those out, it's a good resource. And I think I put that in the chat earlier. I'll just repaste it there. Okay. Another neat feature that we have, and this is only available for our institution licenses. So if you have an Accudemia Lite, you would need to upgrade for that. But we have Outlook 365 integration. And this can be complicated and complex. This is another one of those things where, because the tutor is actually signing into Outlook 365 through their account, um, you actually have to have the tutor log in and check to see that they're connected. Now, the one thing that this has over the Zoom integration is we actually have a page where you can see as an admin, if I go to administration and advanced, there's this Outlook 365 integration page, and I can see what emails are connected. Now, it doesn't tell me whose account, but I could disconnect it if there was ever a problem. As an admin, I could do that. But usually you can see, and maybe based off their emails that are in here, who's got their accounts connected properly. Let's see. Just kind of a little bit more on that. Um, I think I have mine connected here. Oh, I haven't. Um, I'll go ahead and connect it real quick just to show. So that was under connect to Outlook 365. So if you're a tutor, you'll have that option on the institution account. And then it was really just to pick which type of connection. So we have the Google Calendar or the Outlook 365, and I just chose the right one and then signed in through my Microsoft account. One of the things to note is it's always going to connect with your default calendar here. And there's two different things. This is the calendar that the appointments go to when they're made in Accudemia. And then these are all the calendars that could potentially block time off for you. So if you had like a shared calendar, maybe it's like a team calendar where you guys have team events that you need to be blocked off from. It's kind of helpful because, that way you don't have to think about, oh, wait, did I make sure to block that off from my scheduled time in Accudemia. But you'd always want to usually use the calendars by default like this, and then any other shared calendars that you need to block time off as a tutor. Oh, I don't want to log out. Okay, and then the last thing here kind of is tutor tasks. So this is completely optional. I know some people may not even have their tutors kind of like sign in and sign out to collect their work hours. But if you do, one of the things that we had added recently was under administration. We have this thing called task. And what you can do is basically create as many kind of tasks that you want to have your tutors when they're signing in to collect their work hours um, that they could be working on. So always have like regular work hours so that they can just kind of collect that information. Maybe you just call it tutoring or what they mainly work on. But then I have other things like if they're working on study guides or test prep or anything like that, that they can clock in and out for those items as well. And you just do new task, give it a name, and it defaults to all centers, but what you would do is just check the center that task should be available for that tutor. And when they sign in, it'll just be one option that pops up for them to sign in. So now these are the things that the other stuff we were talking about is really helping them with like getting them to help with like walk-ins and appointments and you know working in the center. This is more of the back end and things like they might do. So as a tutor, you're going to log into the back end maybe to schedule appointments. I like to set up a tutor dummy account or test account and just log in, go through the process, and show them what they should have access to on the back end. If you guys are using single sign-on, I know that can be a little more difficult because you usually have to have a user. So you could just have one of your tutors log in and show them how that works. The other thing is like signing in for work hours is basically one of two options. You can either sign in at a kiosk or allow them to sign in remotely. So at the kiosk is pretty much like always been in the system. So they would just type in their number at the kiosk. That's pretty straightforward. As long as it's been set up as a sign-in station, they'd do that. Now the remote sign-in, you have to enable that if you want them to be able to do that. And this kind of takes us back to the control panel under administration and in those user account settings, access restrictions. There's one that says tutors can sign in and out. Yeah, sign themselves in and out from any screen. So basically under their menu option, if that's checked, they're going to get this sign into location so they can sign in and out for the day, even if they're working remotely. So you might just want to show them, how that feature works, like with that test tutor account.
Closed door days, so I close doors.
And then the next thing you might want to have your tutors do, just to kind of get more understanding for what happened during the session, is have them complete comments and assessments when they meet with the students. So there's actually two places to go. You can either go to Center Attendance Manage Center. And in here, when we have students signed in here, I'll just create one for a second. There we go. And tutoring face-to-face. All right, so we should be good. I'm going to create that log. So you can see once we have somebody signed in from this Center Attendance Manage Center, I can mouse over it and there's a few options. I can basically sign the student out, complete an assessment, or add comments. Adding comments, I can attach things. So if there's any kind of forms that we had them fill out that we scanned in, maybe we would attach that to it and just add some comments about how that session went. It does timestamp them. So just something like whatever they want to put in there. And add comment, so you can see it's time stamped. They can go back and edit that if they need. You can actually limit how long they can go back and edit it. So maybe you put like a 48-hour window and then it's set. But that's pretty much it. And then other people can comment on that as well. Maybe you had a question and they'll be notified whenever there's any comments made on there. The other thing is an assessment. And I don't have one set up for this center, but basically this is sort of like a survey, but it's per session that they've had. And so you could ask questions like, how did the session go? Rate it from 1 to 10. I don't know. And you could have basically preset, like maybe you have a multiple choice, like what skills did you cover in this session and things like that. So those would be two ways to kind of get more information about the visits. And if you take advantage of that, it might help out. So it's pretty much all I had for the tutor processes side. And then the last part is just to kind of show you off some of the reports. So when you get adding people in the system and giving them different roles and permissions and stuff like that, so there's a user roles and permissions report that's really helpful. And you can filter by specific users. So if you wanted to see specifically like what someone has, and it would show you sort of like what you see in the system, where it has like the symbols for what their student, tutor, or admin. But it also lists those permissions in there if they are an admin. We also have this one. It's a permissions by template. So if you're not sure like what permissions you gave a certain role, you could actually print out that and it'll show you all the different permissions, and you could filter for a specific template if you're only worried about one of them, let's say. So that can be helpful. I mean, you can see it in the system, but it's a good report. Sometimes it's better to be able to kind of like expand out on it and see all the different things at once than in the system view. This one is good when going through and like if I was to identify like which of my users, so you can see like, this tutor right here needs to update their connection link, so you can see who hasn't or who has completed their links in there. So it's called Tutors with Connect Links. There's a external calendar integration, which helps with the Office 365. Now, this is very similar to that view that we had in there. But if I needed a report real quick, just to kind of go through it, maybe I want to highlight it with a highlighter or something like that to make sure everybody's connected. That's a good way to kind of get that. So it's called external calendar with integration. And then we have a few different tutor hour reports. So these you're going to get a lot more filtering. Maybe it's based on the tutors, the task, the location, what time they signed in. This is good for weekly reporting. You can choose to show the ID. Groups are good because like if you have different types of tutors, maybe you have peer tutors versus pro tutors, you could actually filter that group out. You would have to create them in the system to do that. And we have a summary as well where it gives you the number of visits and or the number of hours. So there's a summary report of those tutor hours. Oh, and I guess that's it. So if you do want to see those, it's just in your report section, and you'll just search. Usually, if I put a keyword like tutor or what I'm looking for, like if it was permissions, maybe I put in the word permission, and you can find those. Calendar would be a good keyword for that one. So that's all I got. I saw we had some questions getting put in there.
Yes. So it looks like the first question from Linda, if a tutor leaves and is no longer a student, would we lose data if the tutor's account is deleted? And I'm gonna take a swing and say you don't want to delete the tutor, but that doesn't mean that you still need to keep them active.
Yeah. So yeah, I would inactivate them before deleting, just because you might lose something with associated with that tutor. Now, I think the logs generally stick around, but if you wanted to see anything else like from that tutor, we did separate the logs from that, so like the logs are what the logs are. But sometimes in certain reports you'll get unspecified where it had like the tutor's information. So inactivation is always a better option. Now, if you need to not make them a tutor, so they don't um, have the same permissions and the ability to do things in the system, you could actually take away that tutor role as well. And they still should show up in those reports where they were a tutor. So.
And keep in mind that Linda might be concerned because most accounts have a limit on the number of active students you can have. And that means that you can have as many students in there as you need to keep the legacy data. You would just inactivate any student who's no longer enrolled, and it won't count against your limits there.
Right.
And then Julie's asking, will this work with other platforms besides Zoom? And I think she's, Julie, I don't know if you were referring to, you're welcome, Linda. I don't know if you're referring to the connect links or the integration, because the official integration we have is only with Zoom, but
Yeah,
we
it was the
can.
connect
Go ahead.
links.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah, you can use any link as long as it's like a standard link that they're always going to have access to. And like I said, technically you could use a shared meeting link, in the connect link field, but typically it works a little better if everybody has their own individual, so that you're not bumping into other people. But if you have a way of like doing kind of breakout rooms and having a main lobby, then that's up to you how you want to run that.
All right. Any other questions on this topic before, you're welcome, Julie, before we open it up to general Q&A? You can feel free to unmute yourself or put that in the chat. Give you a few seconds.
Hi, this is Linda. I do have a question, but it's about
Sure.
a bit of another topic, so I wasn't
Okay.
sure if you want to wait or.
I think at this point, it sounds like everybody's, and of course, if anybody does think of anything related to this topic, we can also tackle that during general Q&A. But yeah, let's go ahead and open it up. So go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. We actually do some series of workshops in our centers, in different centers, and I'm trying to find a way to track, to track that data. And I'm wondering if if someone can recommend a good way to do that. For example, should I set up a class to track attendance, or should I set up a different service, right, to do that? I think there's several opportunities or ways to do that in Accudemia, and I'm just wondering what best practices are out there.
So so you said this is the tutor training?
It would be, no, it's workshops for students.
Workshops for students, I'm sorry.
Centers have different workshop series.
Sorry, my brain. Okay. Yeah, so is this the kind of thing where you would want to track exact number of hours in the session or exact number of minutes in the workshop, or is it just enough to have like a head count of who was there?
That is a great question. In this case, just the head count would work.
Yeah, so in that case, a classroom might be their best option. Nick, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we have a small class attendance section, so you could create like a class instance where you just kind of get present versus absent for that. So you could go in and start, building out a class for an existing course that you have in there. And if you don't have an existing course, you can actually just build one in there. So I have some that I've created like for the different workshop names. So I have like a time management workshop. So I could actually build like in classes where I just take roll and kind of punch like, oh, this person showed up, this person showed up. Or, even a sign-in kiosk where it's set up as a classroom sign-in. So, yeah, you can do it that way. The only thing is, like Rachel was saying, is you only get like whether they showed up or not, and there's no like exact time. So if you want more of an exact time, I've seen some people set up the service as like workshops, and then maybe the courses as like the different topics that you're going in for. And then that way you can collect an out when they leave as well.